to 90s Classics. I am Tim.
And I'm Andrew.
This is episode 3 of our podcast, and today we are looking back on The Relic. Now, this was my choice. I mentioned in the last podcast that I remember this being an absolute masterpiece, and so I was deeply concerned it was not going to live up to my expectations. And my impression is that broadly it did. I thought it was really, really good. It was extremely effective. Tom Sizemore was, for the most part, as likeable as I remember. But there was also, without doubt, weaknesses, which no doubt we'll explore. But I am very interested to hear your overall thoughts, Andrew, before we go into some more specifics.
We had our first semi-disagreement because I was a bit underwhelmed.
Whoa.
Look, it wasn't terrible, don't get me wrong, but plenty to say in the less good component, and all in all, I was expecting it to be better than it was.
Ooh, interesting. Okay, well, I'll start with my positives. As I said, I remember Tom Sizemore being fantastic, and I thought he, broadly speaking, was. I thought there were some parts where he was a bit of a douche, but I liked the fact that his character was gruff, but kind of only because he was actually really serious about his job for the most part. I thought he was short with everyone, but he was just deeply committed. He was genuinely concerned with solving the case, and I quite liked the fact that they didn't go into a relationship thing with Penelope Ann Miller. I thought that would have been weird, and I thought they sensibly avoided it.
I agree with you on that point,
Mm-hmm.
but the part about him being likeable, I just had him down as one of the issues with the movie. I thought he was uniquely unlikable for a lead.
Ooh.
And I waited for it. Like, I love Tom in Heat. Absolutely worship the ground he walks on in Heat. He just never warmed up. I just went, what am I supposed to like about this guy?
I loved his seriousness, his commitment, his love for his dog that he'd lost in the divorce. Come on.
The dog joke was overdone, okay? They worked the dog joke and it just wasn't there, I didn't think. But anyway, continue, please.
And look, he did have one of the greatest lines in cinema. What's he doing? Starting a hypothalamus collection? Come on. You cannot go past a line like that.
Look, I mean, I retract everything I said. I must have glossed past that. Right, okay.
Well, I'm interested then to skip to Penelope Ann Miller, because funnily enough, she was one of the parts that I was a bit disappointed by. I thought, don't get me wrong, she was fine, but, look, comparing her to Mira Sorvino in Mimic, she was alright, but she passed herself off as the clever scientist quite well, but I didn't find myself loving her as much as I remember loving her when I watched it in the 90s.
I thought she met expectations. No more, no less. I think I said that she was, the poor woman's Nicole Kidman.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Like that was exactly what she was in appearance and in character. I thought she was perfectly solid without lighting up the movie, but clearly stronger than Tom.
Ugh. I thought the setting was really interesting. The museum succeeded in being a bit of a character all its own. I liked the fact that you had the area that was open to the public, and then you had the sort of science places, and then you had the underground parts that hadn't been used, where the homeless guy was staying and the creature was growing and eating people.
See, I had here museum setting not fully utilised. I thought that is a potentially a genius setting, and we saw a bit of it with I can see what you're saying. There was sort of the tunnels and the science labs and stuff, but it didn't hold together to me as let's take the prototype, like Alien. Mm-hmm. Where on board the ship, the design of the ship and the relativity of where everything is absolutely critical to the monster. I never really got that. The monster just appeared in an area, and I went, oh, okay, the monster's there. And then they told us that they couldn't get from one area to another, and I just went, oh, okay, you can't get from one area to another. And they could have done more with that.
Yeah, okay, and it does remind me of one of the most absurd parts of the movie, which was when they're doing the superstition presentation and they're all walking through the special exhibition, and then for no obvious reason the monster has somehow crawled above the exhibition space and drops a body into the middle of the group. makes not the slightest bit of sense. It doesn't fit with the structure of the place at all. But I love it. I absolutely loved it. Oh, let's see what else. The coroner scene was fantastic. The smart mouth coroner.
Yes.
And very clear memory I had was the monster being on fire at the end, and thinking at the time, that is the greatest piece of special effects that has ever hit cinema. And look, it actually was not bad. It wasn't great. We've seen a million things like that ever since. But I can see why I was impressed by it at the time. I thought it was quite a cool finale, and because Tom Sizemore's absolute jerk move was locking her in the rooms at the end because he wanted to go off and be the big hero, and so it was genius that was a part where he got completely screwed, because then obviously the monster gets in, and then, see, you should love this, because she defeated him with biochemistry. Oh. She beat the monster with biochemistry. I would have thought you'd appreciate that a bit more than clearly you did.
Well, I mean, perhaps that's to do with my 55% in biochemistry that I got, so I didn't understand it. Yeah. I actually thought the finale was one of the highlights.
Yep.
I thought the finale was good. The on fire thing was cool. I noted that Tom Sizemore does nothing in the finale.
Yes.
This is one of the things that, like, he's built up as a main character in the movie, and while it's refreshing that the cop doesn't save the day, he actually does absolutely nothing for the last 10 minutes of the movie and has absolutely zero role in beating the monster.
Yeah, no, it's a fair point. Yeah, that's right. I mean, and sort of on the other hand, Penelope Ann Miller does very, very little for most of the movie, and then in the final 10 minutes suddenly does everything and defeats the monster. That did feel a bit funny to me in both respects.
I mean, I would generally say it was better once it became an action movie. I thought that basically, was it a Stan Winston? I think it was.
Yep.
They spent their money on the monster. I thought it moved pretty well and looked pretty good.
Yep.
And if we're saying that in 2023 about a 1997, 8, 9 movie, then it must have been damn good for its time. So I suspect we were a bit blown away. And as an action movie, I thought it was pretty cool. It was the getting there, which was the more problematic.
That's funny, because one of the notes I made was that I thought it felt like almost exactly the right length. I thought it was structured really nicely. It built up really well, and just when you want it to hit its straps in a proper action, it does. And then that goes for about the right amount of time, I thought.
This is a whole extended conversation, but I'm getting my partner to watch these movies with me. Not necessarily a big fan of this sort of movie, but you can rely on the fact that a 90s movie will be a taut 90 minutes. So if it's going to be not that great or not your cup of tea, it'll reliably be over in a certain amount of time.
Yep.
While today's movies that casually come in at 145 minutes, if you're watching a lemon, then it is a very, very painful experience. So I do respect that kind of thing. Like, just about anything can hold my interest for 90 minutes, and that's a positive.
As you say, completely a whole podcast about that. Yes, absolutely liked the solid 90 minutes, and it felt about right for this. And as you say, there would have been an extra half hour if it was released this year.
Yeah.
The major other positive, I thought, and this may be very controversial, the science was ridiculous. Let me accept straight up that the science was utterly absurd, but I thought it was delivered reasonably well. I watched it and I thought, I instinctively know this is rubbish, but it's kind of sounding like it could be a thing. Other than, of course, the fact that one of my favourite moments was, in fact, it was two ridiculous moments, at least, when she's doing the genetic testing with this genetic DNA machine that she's programmed, and just somehow it comes up with an actual individual in its DNA record.
Genius.
It's like, this thing is designed to detect, like, beetles and stuff. But no, it is this specific individual who is in our system. I also like the fact that, and it was just, again, much like the dropping the body in the middle of the exhibition, the fact that the monster at the end just blew up, exploded. It was on fire and just explodes as if it has a bomb inside.
Nice.
Again, no explanation. Doesn't make a lick of
Petrol
sense.
for blood.
That's right.
That's what it is. But, I concur with what you're saying, though. It didn't offend me, the science, and that kind of movie. You're doing well if you break even. If you, because it can just hamstring a movie and just make it ridiculous, and it didn't. It moved the plot along. So.
Yeah. I like the very obvious foreshadowing of that classic thing in these sort of movies where I can't remember his name, but the old guy in the wheelchair, who's like, oh, he's got this crazy idea that, of course, is a load of rubbish, and then, of course, describes the precise thing that is about to come true. Yeah, I see what's going on here.
I liked the old guy.
Yeah,
I liked the old guy.
Yep.
Some of the support characters didn't really jump out at me, but I liked the old dude. I think he did good work.
Yep, agreed. All right, well, I think I've gone through most of my positives. Can
I add one positive?
Yes, please do.
The SWAT scene.
Oh, yes, of course.
It was as good as envisioned.
Yep.
I remembered the biting the person in half and then them being dragged over the top, or then us realising that they were only half a person, as good as advertised. I didn't remember the aerial shot down from the ceiling on the monster, which was freaking awesome.
Yep.
So I really ramped up a notch that movie at that point in time, and loved it. Basically, my mission in life is to be in a SWAT team and die horribly in an action movie.
Oh, for sure. And I think we mentioned it last time, the chasing the guy down, all within the same shot, the chasing the guy down, jumping on him and removing his head, all without cutting. I mean, very clever. It genuinely looked... maybe they actually did decapitate the guy. I don't know.
Which brings me to my last positive. Deaths and bodies good.
Yep.
And by that I mean both the act of killing and also the general corpses and the like.
Yep.
Well done, realistic. Probably a cut above its type of movie at its time.
Yep. Agreed. Yeah. And I wonder as well whether that's because I mean my reading of the box office results is that it didn't do particularly well, and I seem to recall. I think there's a real run these days in modern times of sort of ultra gory movies, and I think it wasn't so much of a thing back then, and I wonder if that almost scared a few people away. Because you're right, I thought it was impressively gory and perhaps a bit of a level up in that respect than a lot of other movies at the time, or especially mainstream movies at least. All right, well, it sounds like you've got a few negatives to deliver.
I mean, I've touched on a few of them. Tom Sizemore just didn't really like him. More generically, though, man, we had some character stereotypes in there. Like the police officer could not have been more police officer. The police officer's sidekick. The nerdy but likable, good-hearted scientist. The evil, scheming scientists side by side.
Yep.
We had them all. We had the mayor. We had
so the security guard guy who's always just doing everything that police don't want him to do.
Yeah. They didn't throw a whole lot of attention at the character development, I would have to say. And if they'd had George Clooney and Nicole Kidman, this might have worked, but they didn't. So it took a while to get going for that reason, I thought.
Other than Linda Hunt, who we mentioned in the preview, I thought she was great. Other than that, none of them really did anything, and so it was really just about waiting for the monster to start eating people for the most part.
But I think one of my bigger issues was it lacked humour. I mean, you've busted out the hypothalamus gag, okay? I vaguely remember that. I barely cracked a smile. And, kind of the formula for these sort of movies is you back to back your relatively finite budget for your action or sci-fi scenes, and you make them kind of, funny or likeable. And as I said, it was only moderately likeable because the characters didn't hugely do it for me. And I thought it lacked humour. It didn't... I don't know if the two kids were supposed to be the source of laughs. They really weren't. They really weren't. I don't know if the scheming other scientist was. He was marginally amusing.
I think, No, I mean, well, I'd certainly agree that it lacked humour. As in, I think there was some attempts which, for the most part, fell fairly flat. I would agree that it really did. And, any movie that is not at all funny needs to be really good at all the rest of the stuff. And look, I'll give you that one.
The last one I would say is it was just filmed very black.
Yeah.
Don't know if it was the copy that I was watching, but I think it was the movie. And I'm assuming that was a budgetary thing, in that they deliberately filmed in darkness to get away with more. But it reached the point of slight frustration to me in that you lost some... You could have had more power out of a scene if you'd just been able to see a bit better.
Yeah, I agree with that, and I think I'm perfectly happy with that sort of thing at the start. The old formula of slowly build up, see a bit more of the monster, and then it all shows up in all its glory. But then I think even after it had showed up in all its glory, especially I think the scene where a whole bunch of people got eaten in the main exhibition room after some of them went off down the sewers to escape and the others stuck around. There was that big scene there where I think, as far as I can tell, sort of 7 or 8 people bit the dust. and you could barely see anything in that. It was just, and again, we watched it on the same old DVD copy that we had. Maybe it was something to do with that, but yeah, I do agree that scene in particular, I remember being dark to the point of being kind of irritating.
You know, funnily enough, I feel like talking you through it, I've slightly decreased your opinion, and talking me through it, you've slightly increased my opinion. But yeah, that's about where I stood.
Yeah, and I mean, look, we've sort of addressed it, but how did it age? We are both sipping on a red wine at this stage. Has it aged as well as this red wine has aged? Could if that movie was released today, how do you think it would fare?
Not particularly well. Like, part of the reason we're doing this podcast is the sort of flavour of those sort of movies seems to have gone away a bit. Like, they've been overtaken by the Sharknadoes and stuff of the world, which are consciously tongue-in-cheek. And we've lost the niche of the movie that's not seeking to be tongue-in-cheek, it's just seeking to be, B-grade, not Z-grade. I think they would need a bit more characterisation today.
Yep.
I feel like the action and monster would still hold up. They were good. They were well done. They were good for their time and would remain good. There wasn't anything horrendously sexist or racist or anything that particularly jumped out at me in there. So I think that would hold up. So I suspect it would slip through to the keeper a little bit today.
Yeah, there was no real cringeworthy moments, I don't think. The Tom Sizemore character would have been a bit different these days. Possibly either going one way to being openly a jerk, a jerk but who's good at his job, or through to just not being a jerk. And he was kind of somewhere in between in a way I think that was fairly common in the 90s. A bit of a dick to Penelope Ann Miller in a way that did make me sort of go, oh, every now and then. But for the most part, I mean, it really wasn't that bad, and she pretty much stuck up for herself most of the time, I think. Maybe this was something that slightly annoyed me about her, that she was just a bit of a hysterical woman at times in circumstances where I kind of wanted her to be a bit tougher, and that's probably silly because she's a scientist, she's not a cop. At the end of the day, she did kill the monster through being genuinely
she
brave.
She didn't do it fast enough. Okay?
That's right.
I wanted an 80-minute movie, not a 90-minute.
That's right. I wanted to do it with a steely grin. None of this screaming or shouting. But yeah, no, look, I think overall, it held up pretty well. The special effects, I mean, they didn't go beyond their capabilities with the special effects. So I think even though, sure, they'd probably look a bit better these days. They hid them well and they worked within their limits. And so I thought that side of things looked pretty good still. So yeah, any other comments about the Relic? Box office wise, it didn't seem to do very well. The figures seem to say a $40 million budget, $33 million gross. But having said it only had international figures. I think in those days, it only had US figures, even though it called them international figures. And that doesn't include video or anything else other than... So look, I'm not sure, but I think by most accounts it was a bit of a flop, which is a surprise because I don't quite understand why it flopped, other than to say that maybe it was not quite the type of movie that was bringing people into the cinemas at that time.
Well, funnily enough, that I associate that era with that sort of movie. I'm almost wondering, did it get swamped by release date at a very similar to another time? I mean, the reason we're doing this podcast is that it's like the golden age of our cinema experience, where there was a lot of these sort of movies.
This is true.
I don't know if it got swallowed by something else.
True.
I agree. I can't see why it wasn't a modest success.
I mean, I don't think Tom Sizemore. I mean, I didn't know who he was before. Now I know he had been in stuff, but I didn't know who he was at the time. And Penelope Ann Miller, I can't now remember if it was before or after Carlito's Way, but either way, she probably wasn't a name at the time. So I guess they didn't even have the sort of token name to get people into the cinema. I mean, Peter Hyams, I think he was maybe, I can't remember if he went on to make Time Cop or had already made it, but he was a someone, but he wasn't he was no Spielberg, or he wasn't a big enough director to bring people into the cinema on his name alone. So maybe it just sort of it was a 7 out of 10 on a whole bunch of things, but didn't quite do enough to get people off their butts and into the cinema.
So would you watch it again in another 20 years?
Oh, absolutely.
Watch it again next year.
Yeah,
So I watched it last night.
That's right. Yeah, no, I really liked it. I thought it was really good, and I'll definitely watch it again.
I will circle back at some time in the future.
So now that was my selection. Andrew, your selection for the next movie we watch.
You will be very excited to hear that the next movie we watch will be 1997's Anaconda.
Ah, that is very exciting.
Let me talk you through Anaconda.
Please do.
So, really a bit of an all-star cast. We have J-Law, who has gone on to be quite the respected actress. This might just about have been her first big Hollywood movie. I think it was before the Tarsum one.
Yep.
With the crazy outfits. The Cell. Yep.
Yeah, it was. Yep, for sure. I'm almost certain it was her breakout role. Yep.
Ice Cube.
Yep.
After Boys in the Hood, before 1001 imitations of Boys in the Hood. Eric Stoltz.
Yes.
Bit of there's a 90s name. He was probably just about the best known at the time, I think.
Yes.
But the scene stealer. We're going to be talking about it constantly when we review this movie.
John Voight.
Just one of the most remarkable on-screen performances. I'm not sure whether for good reasons or bad.
One of the greatest accents in cinema history.
Quite seriously, what was he? Was he Polish? Was he Mexican? I don't know.
I'm pretty sure he didn't know. So how are we supposed to work it out?
Unclear. And then some other folks in there. Early Owen Wilson. The earliest Owen Wilson.
Yes.
An actress by the name of Kari Wura, who went on to do the mighty Eight-Legged Freaks, that of course we'll be reviewing at some time. And a guy named Jonathan Hyde, who known well for being in The Mummy, another one of my favourites around that era.
Yep.
So that's a delight, the cast. A delight, I tell you. Really interested to see IMDb 4.8 out of 10.
That must be a bug. There must be something wrong there.
It's catchy.
Yeah.
Is it that it was so bad it was good? That is my question. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Thoroughly. At the time. But was it actually terrible?
So when's the last time you've seen it? Because I've seen it...
20 years.
I've seen it relatively recently. So I'm not going to say anything about it. I've rewatched it within the last few years.
Oh my goodness.
So I'll say absolutely nothing more about it.
It's going to be a delight to me. But anyway, brutal review. In my mind, I thoroughly enjoyed it. What else is there to say? The director, someone by the name of Luis Losa, Lousa, seems to have made a lot of movies in Spanish.
Okay.
Tellingly, this appears to have been his sort of last English language movie. Before that, he'd made The Specialist. With Sylvester Stallone and Sharon Stone, which I have a sentimental spot for, but it's a terrible movie.
Yeah, I remember that.
And also Sniper with Tom Berenger, which I think was another terrible movie.
Yep.
So I think he kind of 3 strikes and you're out kind of thing.
It's a bit surprising. I thought, whatever else you say about it, I thought Anaconda was a grand success.
I don't know, but he had one more thing, I think from a few years later in Spanish, but so unless he passed away, but I don't think so. So that's interesting. The other thing that has to be said about Anaconda is separating the original from the litany of bad sequels,
which we have watched a few of, I think together at least, and I've watched a couple separately. They are just shocking.
I mean, 2 of them I can remember are absolutely disastrous. And I have a feeling that's not even remembering the direct sequel, number 2, which had some pretensions of being a real movie and was disastrous, I think. So we have to sort of separate those from our minds. So, yes, I'm pumped. Don't remember general details, boat trip down the Amazon, maybe some sort of scientific or cultural expedition.
Yeah, they're making a movie.
Yes. All right. Group of, American folks, mostly. John Voight's the kind of mysterious dude they run into. Anaconda mayhem ensues.
Exactly. Yep. No, very excited. One thing I remember about this, and I can't remember if I saw it with you or not, but I remember... I think we had free tickets at a cinema in the city, which I never used to go to because we saw all of our movies at a suburban cinema, and we had the cinema in the city, and I was like, oh wow, free tickets, amazing! I'll definitely go to that. Parked, genuinely thought I didn't need to buy a parking ticket. Turns out I did. Seeing Anaconda cost me $100. And that is $100 in the 90s. As a student, who didn't have a cent to my name, is crushing it to me. But, was it worth it? I'm going to say yes.
Right, bring it on.
All right, excellent.